Happy Monday. I'm actually heading out for the day. I'm going to a workshop with Life Labs. Life Labs is the blood work company that we use for all of our blood work at the clinic. So I'm going to go and do a workshop with them. I'm really excited. It's all on stress and burnout, which I'm super excited for. It's not going to be so much lab focus. It's actually a treatment focused workshop, which I'm really excited for. The more I study it, the more I realize that there is so much to learn. There's so many options with treatment, and you want to make sure that you are choosing the right options. We have so many different herbs, we have so many different treatment options for stress and burnout, and I really want to get better at matching the exact treatment to the patient. I'm really excited for that. I'm gonna make some breakfast really quick. I think I'm just going to have some baked oatmeal. I meal prepped this yesterday, but it's just some carrot cake baked oatmeal. This recipe is in a few Sunday resets back, so I will link that video somewhere. And then I'm probably gonna top it off with butter. I think I'm feeling peanut butter this morning. And then I'm also just gonna top it off with some of this water buffalo kefir, which I've been obsessed with. I'm not a huge fan of kefir, but this one's really good. So I'm gonna have that and then head out. They are providing us lunch today, which is great. But I'm going to head out soon. I'm actually gonna TTC up to my parents' place. And then my dad's actually offered to just give me a lift there, which is great because then I don't have to drive, because it's actually been over a year since I've driven a car and I just really don't like to drive. So that is the plan for this morning. I'm gonna make up some breakfast and then I'll catch up with you guys later.
This person has all of the cognitive tools they need. Why they get anxiety at exactly 10 o'clock and exactly 2 o'clock. And if your blood sugar is dysregulated and you're inflamed, then you're not going to be able to. When it comes to burnout, when it comes to exhaustion, when it comes to sleep, these are really the triangles we're looking at. To insulin, gut health, and hormones. And within hormones, where are hormones made?
In the mitochondria?
Sometimes the mitochondrial pillar, even though I call it hormones, because of what's happening in the liver, because of what's happening with cellular signals. To show that the connection between the immune system, insulin, and the nervous system is so intertwined at the level of the brain. It's part of why some women can't handle anything that is for their period. There's a lot more that's going on here that we need to unpack. I'm not sure if any of you guys saw the study that came out recently that showed that women who are going through the late perimenopausal transition have completely different circadian rhythm. Do you ever have patients that get hives at night after dinner? You're trying to figure out why? Huge thing right now that we're seeing, but we have these patients that have patterns of dysregulation, and we're like, oh, okay, it's probably just insulin response, fermented food, great, but that's relatively causative. And then we have neurological inflammation, NOS, otherwise specified in the research coming out on DHEA, and the importance of that as a woman, like fibro, pain, endo population. Systemically, there is a deficiency that is cannabinoids, which is why we were talking about the EDS, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and how that changes facial structure. Yeah, so one of the things that we don't hear a lot about that's really important to understand is that when it comes back up the bioelastic system, it actually can suppress CRH, cortisol releasing hormone, and that its role in Parkinson's, dementia, Alzheimer's, all of these types of things. Why are DHEA for keeping the neuroinflammatory status of our brain? It's a marker of long-term inflammatory status, your brain's risk profile over the long run.
I know that she has iron deficiency.
That's when
And her NCDNC, the GGT is high, which is usually for glutathione recycling or some sort of oxidative stress, but that would be, yeah, probably the mold. Definitely insulin resistant, and she's got a weird second peak in her 2-hour insulin glucose challenge test. But her insulin is like in the 600s at 2 hours. It should be like 200. 1 hour, her glucose is 6, pumping out more and more insulin, and then she can't clear it either. There's insulin resistance at baseline because we do want fasting insulin to be 50 or below. Thyroid is not optimal. Probably like triggered by the mold, and then she's developing Hashimoto's. Her LH to FSH ratio is not a 2-to-1 ratio, but you can rule out high prolactin as causing the irregular bleeding. That's a pretty high DHEAS. You also have to remember, like, as women age, the DHEAS goes down. So I would call that in a 44-year-old woman. I would send her for a transvaginal ultrasound, but I feel like we're already hitting kind of 2 out of the 3 of the Rotterdam criteria. But I should probably send her for a transvaginal ultrasound. Sleep apnea.
You see these rapid estradiol fluctuations, because I'm like, you have to get off this. She's like, no, I've never. I sleep an angel, like, no way.
I'm so glad that we're back to doing more in-person talks. I find them so much more helpful than doing webinars. I love a good webinar, and I do a lot of online lectures as well, but I love in-person talks when you can do breakout groups and really discuss the cases. I find that going through cases is really helpful. It's also just how I learn best. I think I always learn best by doing. Also a very visual learner, so I love when we can draw things out. I came home and I just made one of my staple dinners. I have this on repeat because it's just so easy to make. I always have sweet potatoes prepped, so I just warmed up some sweet potatoes, made some smash burgers with some ground beef, and then had that with some broccoli, microgreens, and avocado. I also love this because it's a really easy way to hit my fiber and my protein goals. You have lots of fiber between the avocado and the sweet potato, and then protein and lots of minerals from the ground beef. And then I made these sweet potato brownies over the weekend. I will link a video where I have the recipe for these, but they are so good. And then moving on to Tuesday, I'm in the clinic on Tuesday morning, so I always want something quick and easy before I leave. So I just had some more of the baked oatmeal with some kefir, and then I came home, and again, I needed something pretty quick and easy. So I just toasted an Ezekiel English muffin. I love these English muffins. They are super high in fiber, which is great. I think one English muffin has about 8 grams of fiber. Plus they have lots of different grains, so great for getting in that fiber diversity. But on top of my English muffin, I just mixed together some cottage cheese. I really like to do the pressed cottage cheese. It is a little bit dry and a little bit bland, but if you match it with some avocado and season it with some salt, it's actually pretty good. So I just had that on top of my English muffin along with some smoked salmon. I've also been obsessed with broccoli microgreens, so I've been putting them on everything. And they're also a great source of sulforaphane, which is really important for natural liver detoxification. And then I always try and have that with some sort of seasonal fruit just for some extra fiber on the side. So lately I've just been having figs because they are in season. And then for dinner, so I made this pasta bake over the weekend. A few weeks ago, I had some friends over for lasagna, and I bought some fresh lasagna sheets, and I didn't end up using them all, so I put them in my freezer, and I wanted to use them up. So over the weekend, I just started by sauteing some onions and mushrooms. You can really use whatever type of veggies you want, but I just like onions and mushrooms, and I usually season them with some parsley, garlic powder, salt, and just let them cook down. And then I will set the mushrooms and onions aside, and I just brown some ground beef. And then I added some tomato paste and a few jars of tomato sauce along with the onions and mushrooms and cooked that up. Basically what I'm making is a lasagna, but without all of the fancy fixings. I didn't bother to make a ricotta filling or anything like that. I did have a bunch of mozzarella goat cheese in the fridge that I really wanted to use up, so I just shredded that. And then I basically layered it. So I did one layer of the sauce, a layer of the thawed lasagna sheets, and I really do find that using fresh pasta in any sort of pasta bake or lasagna does make a big difference. I find it tastes better. I find it digests better for me as well. And then I also added some cheese, and then I added the lasagna, and basically, yeah, you guys can see what I'm doing. I'm just doing the different layers. Common question that I get is why I still include gluten and dairy in my diet. And I think that this conversation is a little bit beyond the scope of this video. So definitely let me know if you guys want a separate video talking more about gluten, dairy free, when it's indicated, when it's not, because there are definitely times where I will pull gluten and dairy out of patient's diet. A lot of the times, if there's any sort of gut issues going on, intestinal permeability, autoimmunity, chronic inflammation, there's joint pain or chronic sinus issues, a lot of the times I'm pulling out gluten or dairy or both. But I also think that there are times where it's really unnecessary. There is just so much that goes into that conversation and the decision to pull out gluten and dairy from a patient's diet. So if you guys want a full video, I can definitely make that, because I've seen it on both ends where patients are pulling out gluten and dairy unnecessarily, then on the flip side where they pull out gluten and dairy and it is a huge change to their health, and it actually allows us to do so much other work on their health, because by removing those things, it just allows us to do more work on their gut microbiome and their digestive system and their immune system and their inflammation and all of those other things that are impacting their health. Definitely let me know if you guys want a full video on that. And then on the side, I just made a very quick arugula salad with some arugula, beets, also amazing for the liver, a great source of betaine. And then to add a little bit of extra fiber, I just added some avocado and I seasoned that with some olive oil and balsamic vinegar. That was my dinner. I also added some Parmesan cheese on top. And while I was cooking dinner, I also just cooked up some rice for the next day. One of my favorite ways to make rice is doing a mixture of white rice and then some other grains. So here I did lentils, white rice, black rice, and quinoa. I love doing a mix. I don't know the exact ratio. I just do a full cup of grains. It's usually about 3/4 of a cup of rice and then 1/4 of a cup of the rest of them. And I just cook them like I would normally cook white rice. It adds a little bit more fiber and a little bit more protein to it as well. But you still get the texture of the white rice, and I always try and make that in advance so that it can cool down and become a resistant starch. Moving on to Wednesday morning, I had one of my staple breakfasts. This is just some medium boiled eggs. I just boil my eggs for about 8 minutes. I find that they come out jammy every time. And then I just toasted up some Ezekiel bread and topped that off with some of the cottage cheese and avocado and had some fruit on the side. You guys know I love having the same breakfast over and over again. I find it really just cuts down on decision fatigue. I really make an effort to eat seasonally, both in the food that I'm eating and the way that I'm preparing it. So in the fall and winter, I do try and focus on seasonal produce and then also cooking and preparing them in a warming way. So lots of roasting, baking, stewing, steaming, things like that. And then also using warming spices like cinnamon, clove, garlic, things like that. Here, I just roasted up some kabocha squash. I also had half of a red onion, so I chopped that up as well. And I really wanted to make kind of a kale fall salad. So I just roasted that in the oven at 400 degrees for about 30 to 40 minutes. I just kept an eye on it. And then I did want to add in some sort of protein. So here I just did some chicken thighs that I got from the butcher store. That you could also use tofu or tempeh, and that would be delicious and give you a vegetarian option. And I always season my chicken thighs the same way. I do garlic powder, parsley, and salt. And then I made a maple mustard tahini dressing. So I did apple cider vinegar, tahini, nutritional yeast, which I love. It's a great source of B vitamins, maple syrup, mustard, salt, pepper, and water to thin. This is such a versatile dressing. You can use it on so many different things. For the base, I do like using kale just because I find if you're doing a big batch, it does last longer in the fridge compared to other salads. I also love kale. It's a bitter vegetable. It's a cruciferous vegetable. So again, great for helping to support with liver detoxification, hormonal detoxification, all of those things. Like I said, it does last longer in the fridge, and it's a seasonal vegetable. I also chopped up some apple, again, just to add a sweet component, and it's in season right now, so it's a lot cheaper at the grocery store. I do find that massaging your kale with the dressing is really important. You don't just want to toss the kale with the dressing. Massaging it just helps it break down a lot more. So I massaged the kale, and then I added in the apple, chicken, the roasted vegetables, and then the rice as well, and I tossed that all together. I probably could have used an even bigger bowl, but this was such a great meal prep to have for the rest of the week. And I did end up having that for both lunch and dinner. I was in the clinic in the afternoon, so I wanted something super quick and easy for lunch. And then by the time I got home, I was both physically and mentally pretty tired. So I just wanted something super easy. I did add a little bit of goat cheese, which I think added a nice texture. But of course, you could leave the goat cheese out, and then it's a gluten and dairy-free meal if you are gluten and dairy-free. Thursday was a pretty uneventful day of eating. I just had an English muffin with some cottage cheese, avocado, smoked salmon, and broccoli microgreens for breakfast. And then for lunch, I just had more of the kale fall salad that I prepped the day before. I also snacked on some dates and peanut butter in the afternoon. And then for dinner, normally me and my boyfriend will do salmon, broccoli, and sweet potato for dinner on Thursdays, but he actually had some friends visiting from out of town, so he was with them for dinner. I was on my own. I did end up making a bunch of sweet potatoes. This is always how I prep them. I just do Japanese sweet potato, and then I season them with Ceylon cinnamon, salt, avocado oil, roast them in the oven at about 400 just until they're cooked through. I usually just keep an eye on them. And then I just use these to make little sweet potato sliders. Like I said, this is just my go-to meal when I don't really know what to make for dinner. And then I just had some more brownies for dessert. I am in the clinic on Friday mornings. I always want something quick and easy before I leave, so I just had some more of these baked carrot cake oats. I don't think I mentioned this, but the carrot cake oats alone have 20 grams of protein per serving, not including the kefir that I put on top. So it ends up being about 25 grams of protein. There's also tons of fiber between the carrots, oats, there's chia, flax. I top it off with some hemp seeds. There's also some apples in there, so a great source of prebiotic fibers. And then I always get home in the early afternoon, so again, I want something super quick and easy for lunch. I had a little bit less than a full serving of the kale salad, so I just ended up bulking it up with some of the leftover rice mixture, added some goat cheese on top. That was my lunch. And then since we did not do salmon, broccoli, and sweet potatoes on Thursday, we ended up doing it on Friday. So I will just do up a big piece of salmon. I also roasted some broccoli in the oven, but forgot to film it. I always forget to film it. I think because my boyfriend will come home and then we'll just start talking and I'll forget to film it. But I just use frozen broccoli and I will roast it with some avocado oil, garlic powder, salt. I did some sweet potatoes. I always top my bowl off with tahini. I just think it's such a good combo. And then I just had some dates, peanut butter, and some nettle tea for dessert. And then you guys know I don't normally film on the weekends, but I do try and get some clips. This weekend was actually Canadian Thanksgiving, so I went over to my parents' place. My parents don't eat meat, so there was only 4 of us that were eating meat, so it wasn't really worth it to do a full turkey. I just ended up making a chicken. That was the only thing that I was in charge of for dinner, was the chicken and the gravy. I think it turned out pretty good. I actually think I'll probably start doing this for meal prep at the start of the week. It was so much fun, and obviously Thanksgiving is just such a fun holiday. I know American Thanksgiving is not until November, so you guys still have about a month to go. And then my brother and his fiance also made some apple crisp for dessert. That was so delicious. And then on Sunday, me and my boyfriend just did our normal veggie scramble for brunch. That does bring us to the end of the video. As always, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you got some meal ideas. If you did enjoy the video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Let me know in the comments. Also, let me know what you guys want to see more of, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!